children. Advocates for the program are hoping the new data inspires its renewal next year. Even New Jersey Senator Cory Booker says Congress allowed child poverty to spike. Even people are saying that there's no options for tackling this. Opponents say entitlement programs like the expand child tax credit are too costly and contribute too much to the ballooning national debt. But Booker argues that the price tag of not acting is even greater. Poor Americans primarily use the multi-child tax credit for basic necessities like groceries, utilities, and rent. Republican lawmakers unilaterally opposed expanding the credit in the first place and then extending it to conservative Joe Manchin, who voted for the American Rescue Plan. He also opposed expanding and extending the credit. When congressional Democrats passed the Inflation Reduction Act, a significant climate tax policy bill, it was not even crafted for Manchin. It did not include the expanded child tax credit. The senator has appeared largely unfazed by the new sense state on child poverty. Even to reporters, it's deeper than the expended credit. It can ruin everything.
Corruption and wholesale purchase of members of the Supreme Court. And I also find it amusing that we just heard from the Republican side, why do we want to talk about this? Because women have lost the right to choose, because Indigenous people have lost rights, because minorities have lost rights, because working people across the country have lost rights due to this level of corruption. And if we're going to talk about third parties, let's talk about the Federalist Society, which has not only had deep ties to Justice Clarence Thomas and his wife Ginny, but has also helped choose judicial nominees for the Republican Party and directed multi-million-dollar media campaigns to confirm them, including...
I'm sure you're getting the same calls I'm getting. Look, there are millions of other Americans who do not or are not on Medicare, including 200,000 young people with type 1 diabetes and need this insulin to stay alive. Let's finish the job this time. Let's cap the cost of insulin for everybody at $35. Folks,
went to bills, and this time he is lucky to be able to do a little something nice for himself. Another DMV resident telling us on Twitter she's, quote, not doing anything particularly interesting with her check. Those eligible getting $1,400 payments or more for married couples and those with children. If you have the ability to put the payment toward other things, financial experts say setting aside some money to reward yourself can be...
And they will definitely bring down inflation. They will cause some pain to households. And with inflation at record highs, Americans are feeling the pain of higher prices. It's especially true when it comes to filling their gas tanks. And as of June 22, the average price of a gallon of gas was more than $5. In an effort to provide some sort of financial relief, the federal government has actually come up with several short-term options for assisting the public, while also addressing the larger short-term an issue of inflation at hand. Some of these ideas include tapping into emergency oil reserves as well as federal gas tax holidays to encourage more production out of the oil companies. One of the leading proposals at the moment is the Gas Rebate Act of 2022. It has been dubbed the gas stimulus. Similar to the stimulus checks that were sent out during the crisis, the gas stimulus check would be a series of checks sent to qualifying Americans. Now folks, listen to this. Each payment would be of actually $100, an additional $100 for households and dependents. And for each month where the price of gas was higher than $4 a gallon, the eligibility requirements are less than $75,000 for single filers and less than $150,000 for joint filers. Many individual states have taken matters into their own hands and approved similar measures for their residents. For instance, in California, gas costs are considerably more than in other states. These are the plans to give relief checks of up to $1,000 for a qualifying family. In another group in North Carolina, the state senators are proposing giving every local licensed adult a one-time $200 stimulus payment. So the Bureau of Economic Analysis also reported today that an economic gauge that the Federal Reserve follows closely showed that inflation stayed strong in September, but mostly with expectations. So folks, the core personal consumption expenditures and price increase over 0.5% from the previous month and accelerated to 5% over the past year. It includes the cost of food and energy, and that rose by 0.3%. So this report comes as the Fed is prepared to enact its sixth interest rate increase of the year at its policy meeting next week, in an effort to combat inflation running at its fastest peak since the 40 years. And the Fed has been raising rates increasingly fast, and with increases totaling 3 percentage points thus far, Fed officials watch Friday's data points closely for clues and where costs are headed, particularly with a tight labor market in which there are one job every available worker. Americans just continue to pay more at the grocery store for surging food inflation shows no signs of slowing down, and that's something that's confusing a lot of people. Prices could keep rising well into next year, and experts are concerned about a threat of a recession coupled with high food prices, which rose last month even as the cost of gas, cars, and other products fell. And while the Fed interest rates are slowing demand for certainty discretionary goods, people will always need to buy food, limiting the impact of monetary policy on prices. And according to The Hill, this issue with the supply chain is a problem, and farmers and food processors have reported difficulties, and something needs to be done. President Biden
said the negotiations between the legislature and the governor delayed the timeline of the payments.
Exactly who would get the rebates and how much would they be. And so they finally came to a reasonable conclusion, but it was too late to distribute this money in the summer.
Depending on your income and your tax filing status, you could get anywhere from $200 to $1,050. You must have filed taxes in California in
Senior Citizens League estimates that seniors will receive an estimated 8.7% of COLA in 2023. That's the largest COLA in the last 40 years. In that scenario, the average retired worker will receive an extra $145 a month. However, the official COLA cannot be calculated until December, and so inflation data is not available yet. The average monthly Social Security benefits for retirees was recently around $1,600, or about $20,000 per year, and that average is around $1,700, and so this is plenty of money for people to collect for fuel and pay their bills. But a new proposal would also change the way the benefits are calculated and potentially putting more money into the pockets of beneficiaries. Democratic Representative John Larson has introduced a legislation called Social Security 2011. Its new bill, everybody, would also, among other things, would discontinue the use of the CPIW to determine your Social Security benefits. Instead, the bill would also change the calculations based on the Consumer Price Index for elderly, which places greater emphasis on the cost for food, housing, medical and apparel and medical care. The bill would also provide a benefit bump for current and new Social Security beneficiaries, including those who are receiving retirement, disability, or dependent benefits. The Department of Finance is now working on getting relief for the next round of people who may have been exempt from filing due to income level, pension, or Social Security. State officials have said, using databases, we will send out more checks between now and the middle of October. And my hope is that we may get another 50 to 100,000 additional checks using these methods. The state suggests that anyone who has not received a check to find out if theirs has been mailed and to review the current criteria for residents receiving a second round of rebate. Now, a huge monthly benefit boost, everybody, is coming to everybody for Social Security, SSI, and SSDI. So, eligible Americans must reside in certain areas of the city. Also, a guaranteed income program in Wisconsin will be issuing new payments worth $500 just to you in a few days.
Before this committee for confirmation as Inspector General, and I intend to support that. Let me turn to Ms. Gomez. In 2015, the Federal Communications Commission approved the Open Internet Order, which put in place net neutrality protections and properly treated broadband as a telecommunications service under Title II of the Communications Act. The Trump-era FCC later eviscerated net neutrality and